Welcome to the Apex Energy Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Al-Qattan. Today, my guest is Kenford Bitana. Kenford is the host of the newly created Lighthouse Podcast. The Lighthouse Podcast is for those who are lost in the dark physically, emotionally, or spiritually. In moments of haze, doubt, and despair, their guests serve as beacons of light, illuminating the way and bridging the gap from ignorance to knowing, and from suffering to freedom. Through the valuable information, heartfelt stories, and wisdom shared in this podcast, they aim to provide their listeners with clarity, peace of mind, and the ability to see light. How are you doing,
Mm,
Kenford?
I'm well. Thank you for that intro, bro.
Yeah, I really just read your description. It was quite beautiful. So I hope you didn't mind if I just kind of
No,
snagged
no,
it.
you're good. It sounded good to
Yeah,
hear it.
yeah. So man, I wanted to invite you on this podcast and talk to you about quantum biology and your Lighthouse podcast as well.
Mm,
Um, I really discovered you. I mean, I've been going down this rabbit hole of quantum biology for maybe 3 weeks now, and
Ooh,
I
three
found,
weeks.
yeah, is that
You're
is that
new. You're
premature?
ripe.
Oh, really? Okay.
hmm
Yeah, see, I'm not too familiar, so this is why I wanted to have people like you on to kind of inform me of this area. So yeah, I found you on the Jack Cruz podcast that you did, and
Nice.
yeah, just kind of wanted to have you on, brother, and talk about your journey, perhaps, of quantum biology and light and all this stuff. Would you just like to start with an introduction of a personal introduction with yourself?
Mm. Yeah, so um I was born in the Philippines and I moved to the US when I was about 5. And my family was quite chaotic. And so naturally that led me to try to feel like I would see my family being all disjointed, right? And then I would see other families being all like loving to each other, showing, actually talking to each other, expressing love and appreciation for each other. And so that naturally led me to question myself, who I was, where my worth and value is. And so that always gave me this insane drive to seek solutions and to fill that slot somehow. And so that seeking went into various avenues. And one of them was health. And how that aspect started was very normal. Uh I just graduated high school, went off into the military. I joined the Air Force at 18. And I'm a 18-year-old kid. I wanted to look good and get girls supposedly. And so naturally you start with lifting. So you look up all the workout books, right? Exercise, whatever, go down that rabbit hole. And then you realize you can't just eat anything. So you got to watch what you eat. So I tried to figure out how to eat cleanly. And so you go down the nutrition rabbit hole. And that in the nutrition rabbit hole, this was purely just for my own sake, by the way. Selfish, just me. I just wanted to benefit myself. But I came across, I don't know how exactly, but I came across like big pharma, big agriculture, like how the food guidelines and how food is manufactured to be made to where it's just our default choice to eat. It's the cheapest and it's the most harmful. And oh yeah, yeah. So there's this book. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called it's by Weston A. Price. Have you heard of Weston A. Price?
Mm-mm.
He was a famous dentist back in the 50s. And he discovered like he was a dentist in his own practice in America, and his patients had like rotten, not rotten, but mal-shaped teeth. And he wondered, why is there so many cases of this in my country? Let me go to the primitive countries like elsewhere and see how those people deal with it. And so when he went to those countries, he found those people were robustly healthy. They had whitest, the straightest teeth you could imagine. Like the teeth is a mirror of how healthy you are on the inside, basically. And those people were in physical top shape. amazing oral health. They didn't even use toothbrushes, toothpaste, anything like that. And what he found was their nutrition was so much more dense with local food, natural foods. And then he contrasted it back to what we ate, which was processed food. All our garbage. I'm sure you've gone through that rabbit hole, right?
Mhm.
And so when I realized like he saw that back in the 20s, 1920s, 50s, and I immediately concluded, like as I walked around in my day to day, this is what's happening right now, right? Everyone has to take their wisdom teeth out because our jaws are too small these days. With the peoples he studied, their jaws grew in beautifully. They didn't have to get them out, right? So their health was just natural to them. Ours, without us knowing it, has been taken away from us, and there's no awareness of it, right? So that kind of just seeped into my mind as I walked in my day to day, and I kind of saw how food companies, water, fluoride being in it, all these things. There's like a little matrix of things taking away our health, and we don't even know it. And that's what shifted me from this is my own self I'm serving to wow, we're all getting screwed, and I got to learn more about everything. And so naturally, the path you walk with your own experience is the thing you're going to share, right? So I tried to improve my own health to eventually share with others. And in this nutrition rabbit hole, I'm sure you've experienced this. Every diet camp, they like contradicts one another, man. Like it's hard to reconcile what the carnivore people say, what the vegans say, what everything else in between say. Um, you don't know how to discern what's true, and you don't know how to make sense of it all. And I was just in this place of frustration because I had bought all these supplements, I've tried all these diets, and it honestly didn't move the needle much. I didn't feel as well as I thought, for being so invested into my health. And other people were just like, yeah, it's whatever. The dedication I was putting in and others were putting in, you'd think like I'd experienced more benefits, but there wasn't much. So yeah, I was down that nutrition rabbit hole for what, 18 months. And one day, this is how quantum biology happened. One day, I've like that nutrition rabbit hole consisted of being on Amazon and you buy a lot of books. And so naturally, Amazon just recommends you books, right? And so
Mhm.
my compulsive self would buy those books to just hope, oh, one of these is the key. And one day it was just this random recommendation off Amazon. This book had 26 reviews or whatever. No, like even less than that.
Wow.
The cover was super generic. It was called The Mitochondriac Manifesto. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No.
You once we're done with this podcast, you're gonna read that book.
Okay.
It's
All
like
right, that
it's what got me started, right?
yeah.
So I read this. I clicked on it. It looked generic. Didn't look anything special, but I looked at one of the reviews. They were all 5 stars, and one lady was saying, "Yes, I've been a health advocate for many many years. I've read all the books," and she said this one is different. Like I'm gonna read this one over and over again. Like it hit her differently, right? So that sold me. I got the book a couple days later, and once I opened it up, read the first 50 pages, something clicked, and I devoured that thing in like 3 days. And
Wow.
that's how I got started on quantum biology. And why I devoured it was because I didn't get the details at the time, but I knew that this paradigm resolves the food paradoxes. It resolves all the diet camp wars because all these guys are operating from different points of view. And from this point of view, this one's wrong, and vice versa. But quantum biology just expands the context, okay,
Mm.
and resolves everything by doing that. And once I started applying it, my biggest problem with my health journey was sleep. I could not sleep for the life of me. It was so frustrating. Like I bought I bought like this $2,000 bed thing that cooled down. I thought temperature was my problem. So it cooled down your like bed surface to the optimal temperature for sleep.
Mm.
That didn't work. I tried all the supplements. They didn't do anything. And I'd just be there frustrated out of my mind, like I just can't fall asleep. And I'd go in my day, tired as hell. And then at
Hmm.
night, when night hits, I can't fall asleep. So it was
Wow.
like, oh my gosh, like what gives? And so once I started to apply quantum biology, what Randy, the author in that book, lays out within the first month or so, wow, like my sleep started to improve and it has improved since. So yeah, that's kind of how this whole thing has gotten started. And I've just been going deeper and deeper ever since.
Awesome. And what pulled you to start a podcast and start inviting some of these guests on, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a great question. When you're learning this paradigm, uh, you kind of realize that you've hit a sort of end game. It's not the end, but it's different. But when you go back, so you shifted from food to light, water, magnetism. That's the three-legged stool in this paradigm, right?
Mm.
You're dwelling in this paradigm a lot, and you want to share with these people. You know, with these people, they're all about their food and their supplements, their exercise. Like those are the trifecta. And you go back and say, hey, no, no, but like check out your circadian rhythm and all that. And I've found that there's usually an attachment to food. You know, you try so hard, you're so dedicated to your efforts on food that we come to not feel threatened, but there's this resistance to, hey, there's something past it. And so when I tried to like communicate to these people about a level that's deeper than just food, there was a lot of resistance. And I knew that there wasn't a lot of information in this space in the first place. Uh, Also, I shared this with my family, a friend of mine, and when they shared how much it changed their lives, I just realized, okay, this message just needs to be spread in general. And what better way to do that than, starting a podcast, hosting free episodes, and, consolidating everything into 1 hour so people can take one good gem away from it. So, yeah.
Wow. And what were some of the actionable steps that helped you overcome your issues with sleep?
Yeah. So we can go into some detail. So what I was missing when I was trying to solve my sleep issue, I was missing one thing. Okay. And this is a thing that a lot of people don't notice. There's this belief that the eye, it's just a camera. Like all it does is see light. And if it's just it just takes light like a camera allows you to see. Light out there is just this visual medium. It's optical only. That's it. That's true, but that's not only the case. Your eye is also a clock. It's a clock that reads light. And who discovered this was Dr. Martin Moore-Eid or something like that. He discovered the supracosmatic nucleus. And once you discover that, that shifts the whole paradigm because that is a part of your hypothalamus that uses blue light to read, um, to essentially tell time, to essentially tell day from night.
Hmm.
So I was
Hmm.
taking all these magnesium supplements, buying all these biohacking devices, and I'm on my phone and it's emitting blue light. And it's just completely went over my head. And so once I realized that, I realized I wake up and I look at my phone, there's blue light. And when you look at your phone, your phones, your artificial lights, it's usually around 5,800 Kelvin. To give you some context, that is equivalent, roughly equivalent to solar noon. So like 12 to 2 p.m. So when you look at your phone, you're telling your body that it's solar noon, 12 p.m. at
Wow.
5 a.m. or 9 p.m. And this is the
Wow.
environment that most people are under all day. So I'm sure you can imagine the consequences of that. So what I started to do in the book and in general, everyone will tell you there's two things you just three, but two main things. One, since you haven't been cognizant of this, you're probably blue light toxic. Your circadian clock in your supracosmatic nucleus is probably a little haywire. The two things you do to reset that is one, you see the sunrise every single day. Two, you block blue light at night. Those two things alone will shift your circadian clock from malfunctioning to normal. And once you do those two things, uh, your circadian clock should reorient itself to where, oh, it can tell day from night, light from dark. And that system just resolves itself. And, oh, sleep is no more issue, right? So you're operating off of first principles. What you're essentially doing is retuning your body to the original light and dark cycle it evolved under. The sun is our light and dark cycle, and our body is connected to that. So when you disconnect it by living indoors under blue light all day, no wonder we have a sleep epidemic where people can't sleep, they're tired all day. The implications of this paradigm are drastic. And if one person gets it, it changes their life. So yeah.
Yeah, very just well put. Um, and you kind of combine all this information and make it easily digestible, honestly, because I've heard a lot of this stuff from Dr. Cruz and some others, but yeah, I think you do a really good job of making it clear and easy to follow. So I thank you for that, and I'm sure a lot of listeners would thank you as well. So I can see it now. Um, everyone having these issues with sleep, and the common narrative that I usually see is to avoid blue light. I mean, even I see Dr. Andrew Huberman, who's like probably the most famous podcaster in the health space right now,
Mhm.
says to avoid blue light, avoid. But what you guys are saying in that is that this light is so strong that it basically tells your suprachiasmatic nucleus, it tells your brain and body that it's solar noon. And I'm assuming even at small levels, right? I'm sure if we were to
Mhm.
measure it, yeah. So the key is not to just avoid it, but to completely remove it after the sun goes down, because any kind of exposure to blue light will automatically send mixed signals to the suprachiasmatic nucleus and therefore the rest of your biological process. Is that correct? Or
Yeah,
would you agree with that?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's not blue light isn't like a toxic substance that's tangible. It's
Mm.
just a signal. And that in of itself is neutral. But if you're signaling to your body, yeah, no, it's peak day at 10 p.m.,
10 p.m.
that's just
Yeah.
going to be chaotic. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. And I could definitely see how this could go on and cause metabolic issues. And now with the rise of people talk about mitochondria, or at least from what I'm seeing on YouTube, everyone's talking about mitochondria and its effects
Mm.
on mental health. Have you explored that space at all with Dr. Chris Palmer and his
Oh,
work?
like mental health and like depression.
Yeah,
Not
metabolic psychiatry. Yeah.
yeah, not specifically, but I can see how it because the health of your body, your instrument will directly correlate to how you as a unit will feel, right? Your experience. So if your instrument, your body, your body's mitochondria are shot due to all the blue light, non-native EMF, fluoridated water, then of course your subjective experience will correlate with that. And so yeah, there's no wonder that those diseases, those psychiatric diseases are also sky high. And it's everything, man. Like
Yeah.
chronic diseases, all you see is an exponential curve.
All of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to kind of talk about or delve into, you know, is this light issue the bedrock behind modern illnesses, Neolithic illnesses like Dr. Cruz with stress? When I first heard that, I thought, okay, that's a little extreme. This guy's, he's a
Yeah.
provocateur, he's trying to stress his point. I get it. He's trying to sell his, whatever. Um, but the more I thought about it, I'm like, no, this is big, this light story. And if something as simple as light can affect your sleep, then that's like the bottleneck for all health. If it affects your
Oh
sleep,
yeah.
then it affects everything, right?
Mhm.
So I'm like, what? That's actually not that crazy of a claim. Um, so could you maybe expand upon that a little bit and maybe, I don't know, I guess for me, challenge the idea that this is not a food epidemic, it's a light epidemic
Oh,
potentially.
yeah, yeah. Oh man. Okay. I've been wanting to walk someone through from food epidemic to light for a
Yeah.
while, so thank you. So first, I know when I first heard it in Randy's book, he makes it evidently clear like blue light is really toxic. And I'm like, what? I'm
Hmm.
around it all day. It was shocking, but the more he laid it out, the better. The more I realized like, oh wow, this is really important. So I've kind of come to my own like I walked that path myself, and if I had to take someone down it, I would start with the fact that nature operates off of coupled systems, right? Let's take so let's if someone's skeptical of light being that big of a factor, okay, let's make an analogy. Light and dark is a coupled system. Let's use predator and prey. That's a coupled system. If you extinguish one end, both are gone. The whole ecosystem's going to get trashed, right? So if I take the wolves out of Yellowstone Park, that whole ecosystem's trashed, and there's no debate about that. There's a YouTube video called How Wolves Changed Rivers, and that video is all about how
Hmm.
when they introduced the wolves back into Yellowstone Park, the whole ecosystem flourished. It changed for the better. And that
Wow.
is the non-linear effects of getting your coupled systems right. So let's take it to light and dark, right? Okay. First, before let me take a step back. I gotta set the stage for a man named Dr. Doug Wallace. Have you heard of that name?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So his work is really important to get the implications of this story. So what he found is that mitochondria. First, let's lay this out. If you take cyanide, right, you're dead in minutes. How does it kill you that fast? There's five proteins in your electron transport chain in your mitochondria. You go one, two, three, four, five, and electrons flow through it. And if you block that flow on number four, that's what cyanide does. It blocks cytochrome 4.
Hmm.
If you block that, you block energy, flow, production, and you're dead.
Yeah.
So energy is what drives life. Your mitochondria is the interface of where that energy is transformed into chemical energy. And if you block that first primary instrument, then the whole system goes down. So essentially, your mitochondria are first principles. That's how your whole body even functions, and is as demonstrated as when you completely block it, like you would with cyanide. So, what's the difference between thriving mitochondria and just full on death, like I laid out? So, this is what Dr. Doug Wallace has found: this spectrum in between these five cytochromes, these five proteins in your mitochondria. They, um, it's better. They function better when they're closer together. When they're closer together, those electrons make it through quicker, and the energy transfer is more efficient. And also, when they when they leak out, some of them leak out, they'll make free radicals, right? So when they work better, there's more energy efficiency and less free radicals, aka inflammation. What he found was these proteins will start to spread out. And when they spread out, there's less energy being made and more electrons leak. So let's think about it. Even the health space knows this. The nutritional not quantum biology, health space knows this. When you
Sexual science.
have, yeah, when you have more energy and less inflammation, that's good. All health spaces know that.
Mm,
So when you have less energy and more inflammation, that's bad all across the board. That's the that's the way all these diseases start, right? So this is this is this is healthy. This is not healthy. That's health in a nutshell. On a physical level, he found that the closer your proteins are together, this phenomenon is called heteroplasmy, by the way, the distance between your cytochromes in your mitochondria. How it's this and this. It's a
mm,
game of inches,
wow.
angstroms to be exact.
Wow.
And so everything depends on these proteins in your mitochondria being close and efficient. So what repairs that? What repairs a mitochondrial cytochrome to be this to this? So it's apoptosis and autophagy. These are the two programs in mitochondria. And the molecule responsible for that is melatonin. Your your nuclear genome, your DNA, the thing everyone, raves about, it has a lot of repair mechanisms. But mitochondria only have those two.
Mm,
And those two programs are dependent only on melatonin. It's a primary factor. So let's take it back to light. The one thing that destroys melatonin, this is known in mainstream health, is blue light, especially at night. When your body perceives complete darkness, blackness, that's when it starts to secrete melatonin. And so if you negatively impact your melatonin production by watching TV at night, you make less melatonin. So when you're sleeping, there's less repair going on. So let's imagine melatonin to be like the repair guy for your engine, aka your mitochondria. If there's less repairmen going around, um, you're just getting there's more inflammation accumulating. When you sleep, it's basically repairing all the cellular damage that you accrued in the day, right? So your melatonin levels are directly tied to the congruency of your light and dark cycle. How are you adhering to that? Because if you're watching TV at night, you're directly impairing your melatonin levels, right? And so you're already, by the time you go to bed, you've shut it down significantly. And so every night people are going to bed with shot melatonin because they blasted blue light to their eye right at night, right? And so as that accumulates, there's less repair, there's less melatonin. So these mitochondria, they spread out over time. And what have we seen in the past 50 years? The fluorescent light bulb, the first alien light bulb that has no just blue, no red UV, was made in the 70s. And that's right around when chronic disease started to just take off. And you want to know the two light frequencies that make melatonin?
what?
UV light, infrared light, the two very same frequencies that are absent indoors and present in the sun. Now take it back to how everyone's living. Who is out here baking in the sun? Who's outside anymore? Who sees the sunrise? Who wears red? Who wears red glasses at night? You know what I'm saying? Like, if you
Yeah.
just listen to what I laid out and go in your day to day life and just see the matrix. That this is why people are. This is the first principles of chronic health epidemics. This is why Jack Cruz's work is really important. Yes, there's a learning curve, but anyone who joins this like game, who joins the fight, will be, don't mind me, a lighthouse to this, because everyone's story will spread exponentially. And so that's what
Wow.
I would say to a person that questions light being the first principle. And to really nail this point home, let's say because this is like let's say I'm arguing against a food person, but diet, that's really important. If the context of if your mitochondria, this is how you process food, right? If your mitochondria are damaged, the food electrons can't even be processed efficiently. It's like putting 88 grade fuel, like really good grade fuel, into a car with a smoking engine. You're not even going to
Mm,
process it efficiently. So it doesn't even matter what you eat. And that's usually a triggering point for a food person. But I just want to let you know you can eat your favorite diet, but just go watch the sunrise. Like that will help you process your food more. So that's just to like cap it off for the food person. But to answer your question, your mitochondria are the first principles. Blue light destroys the very molecule that repairs it. And that's where disease goes haywire.
wow. Um, I'm blown away. I'm having a eureka moment right now. Yeah, and so melatonin, just so people know, it's not secreted consistently at high levels while you're asleep. If I'm not mistaken, it only causes you to fall asleep, and then once you're in those deep stage sleep stages, your body stops secreting melatonin. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's it's
Um,
it's in cycles.
It's in
Hmm.
cycles, yeah. Um, so by exposing yourself to blue light, you suppress that release that's supposed to occur. It's supposed to tell your body, hey, this is the time to go to sleep. But by exposing ourselves to blue light, we avoid that signal and therefore avoid the release of melatonin in those high levels, right? So
Hmm.
it's we don't have as much secretion. It suppresses the secretion of melatonin.
Right.
Um, okay. And where does melatonin where is it produced in the
Yeah.
body?
There's
It's
two pools.
yeah.
One is in it's in your so it's secreted at night in your pineal gland, but Dr. Alexander Wunsch has found that when UV light hits your eye, UVA light to be specific, hits your eye during the UVA rise, that's when the sun gets 10 degrees above the horizon. Uh, it hits an aromatic amino acid in your eye, and it makes melatonin that way, which
Hmm.
is a fact not a lot of people know. Light will cause molecular cascades in your biology that are very beneficial. And so that's one way. Morning sun in your eye will make melatonin, and then it's secreted at night. So that's how
Hmm.
you get this pool of melatonin started. And then the second one is a more recent discovery, and I think very big in its implications, especially for sun exposure. Dr. Scott Zimmerman found that this pool of melatonin everyone talks about, it's like 5% of their total supply. Everything else, melatonin is also made in your mitochondria.
Hmm.
And when infrared light hits your skin, infrared light penetrates quite deeply into the body. And so when infrared light hits those mitochondria, they make melatonin, and it's huge, right? So when you're out in the sun, you know, with your Kaneki shorts on, you're making melatonin right then and there. And he's tested this. If you're working outside, there's like this non-diurnal secretion of melatonin that takes place.
Hmm.
So think of these two pools like, let's say I have a house. If I'm outside, just exposed to infrared light, it's like spring cleaning, right? You're keeping your house clean throughout the day, but at night the big the big cleaning happens. So, if some people sometimes do deep cleanings, like on Sunday, your house is like really clean, but
Hmm.
then the damage or the filth just spreads, and then it's a deep clean.
Hmm.
So your infrared light melatonin, the one in your mitochondria, it's like keeping the house tidy throughout the day. and then you have less to clean come on Sunday, right? So you're at night, this pool of melatonin would be like the big spring cleaning, the big like, you know, let's repair all this. And we're
Yeah.
impairing that by seeing blue light at night. And so you can lessen that by being outside and just naturally, cleaning in between when melatonin is made via infrared light. So these are
Mm,
like the two pools of melatonin, and I highly
okay.
recommend Dr. Maxwell Haynes podcast on this with Scott Zimmerman to
Yeah.
get more details. But that's how melatonin is made. And in either case, for this pool, people watch TV at night and they inhibit this pool. So for this pool, for where infrared light, people are inside all day. These windows right here, they block all the infrared light. It's all blue inside usually. And so you're not getting that infrared light that would increase melatonin production. So for
Mm,
this pool, it's still you're still inhibiting it. So no matter how you slice it, outside is usually being like good for you,
yeah.
and staying inside is not so good for melatonin.
Yeah. Okay. I have so many different directions I can go in, and I'm fascinated by all this, by everything you're telling me. I'd like to shift, and you mentioned exercise outdoors, and this is something I'm experimenting with. I stopped going to the gym with the blue light, around, and I'm starting to work out outside more. And Dr. Cruz makes a claim that your mitochondria can migrate according to uh, um, how much light you're exposed to, and if you work out indoors with blue lights, you bury your mitochondrial density inside of your muscles, your muscular skeletal system. Whereas when you spend more time outdoors, and it's not just blue light, and you can do your workouts outside, you bury a lot of your mitochondria where they should be for human beings, which is in the heart and the brain. I haven't found any papers kind of talking about that. Maybe I just haven't looked enough. Could you maybe just shine a light on that part of that part of this whole rabbit hole? Like, yeah,
I haven't I'm not sure about migration, but all like right off the bat, you have UV light, UVA light making more alpha MSH. Oh,
mm,
you've talked with Sarah Pugh about POMC, right?
yeah,
Okay, so POMC gets clipped. One of them is alpha MSH. This is
mhm,
clipped by UV light. And then that alpha MSH makes melanin. And that melanin can split the water molecule, and you're into the whole human photosynthesis rabbit hole.
yeah,
Uh, that will increase energy production by itself. Infrared light in the sun will expand the exclusion zone water in your cells. Gerald
mm,
Pollack has covered this.
mm,
And so, right off the bat, you have two wavelengths of light that increase the bioenergetics of a cell. Already, you're doing great for your exercise, your repair, and what I laid out just previously with that infrared light also makes melatonin. So you're kind of giving your body a better context to work with. If you're, exercising, it's going to cause inflammation. There's going to be more a better pool of melatonin to work with, right? So I'm not sure about the migration aspect, but already you're introducing beneficial frequencies of light that will only do good for your exercise for sure.
okay, okay. I might be mistaken on the migration part. Maybe that's just something I kind of inserted, but I have to
You're
double check.
probably thinking of melanocytes migrating.
Yeah,
I think that's what he's talking about.
yeah, maybe, yeah. Um, and speaking of melanocytes, so melanocytes are the site of the skin that creates melanin, right? It's
Hmm.
below the epidermis, right?
Hmm.
And if we were to kind of take an evolutionary perspective of all this, that people who migrated to northern areas with less sunlight became more light skinned, less melanin, lighter hair, blue eyes, whereas people that remained near the equator had more melanin, so therefore they were darker, right? So I'm trying to think of it in terms of energy production and all this stuff. So, if people who are living near the equator have more melanin, how would that result just performance wise? Would they, I'm just trying to piece it together. Would they have more energy because they have more melanin and it allows them to absorb more sunlight? How does that whole thing work?
Yeah. So this kind of goes into your mitochondria type. So
Mm,
you're either coupled or you're uncoupled. And
hmm
so coupled haplotypes are closer and they use all their energy to tie this into performance. They use all their energy to, run away from a lion, right? They need that like right then and there. They need to use all of it in one go. And then the uncoupled haplotypes, the ones who migrated off to Alaska, they can, you know, sacrifice some of that energy efficiency because if it's inefficient, you emit or you create infrared light in yourself, which is heat, right? So that, uncoupled system in your mitochondria for those haplotypes, they create heat. They don't need to run from lions. They need to survive. And so when you have a coupled haplotype, you have a more, robust right off the bat energy production for performance. But Dr. Cruz has talked about this a couple times in a couple podcasts where he'll notice like the latitude of certain football players, like where they graduated from, where they played, and the ones that at lower latitudes usually perform really well. I'm not sure if you would look into this more, if you'd find a similar pattern, but he also points out that what's the Usain Bolt,
hmm
like where he's from, where he's based, his latitude, and how he has just performed really well, right? So
hmm
would an equatorial type perform well in terms of mitochondria? Sure, I'd say so. Would an
hmm
athlete do well to perform in the sun and use cold? 100%.
hmm
Uh, but yeah, exercise isn't, I haven't explored that aspect too much, but I'm thinking just off mitochondrial first principles that, yeah, no, the closer you are to the equator generally, you do pretty well, but you can also add cold in as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah, he said that. I watched this podcast where he was with, I think it was Holistic Health. They're from the Norwegian areas. And he was saying, what about us? We don't have a lot of sun during certain times of the
cold.
year.
Yeah.
And he said, the cold, embrace the cold, like your
Hmm.
Viking ancestors. And that the cold somehow increases your, I don't know, your semiconductivity or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that allows you, I'm not sure again, how this stuff works, but um, and then that concept of the cold increasing your semiconduction relates back to our ancient ancestors that survived the KT event,
Hmm.
uh, and how they got to. Could you walk us through the story of the KT event? Yeah,
Ooh, well, I'm not too strong on that, like the
yeah, yeah.
evolutionary aspect. But essentially, hmm, how would I put it? That's no, like that's the when was
That's the
that?
part you're not sure on. Yeah,
He introduced that like very recently. It was a couple of months back. And so
yeah,
I'm digesting it still myself.
yeah.
So I'm more good on the aspect where, okay, now that we're here, how has human life
Hmm.
now been affected?
Yeah.
And that's I've had more time to digest on that.
Gotcha. So how does this all relate to spirituality? Because I've noticed an intersection, just a complete intersection. It's almost like you go against certain modern spiritual tropes, but at the same
Mhm.
time you agree with it and join in with it. So Maybe speak to me a bit about that part.
Hmm. Quantum biology is super parallel. It's very has a lot of parallels to spirituality. So if you're familiar, usually a spiritual paradigm will point out, hey, you have this thing you call the ego, and it's basically an I construct that believes it is separate from everything else. The belief in separation is the ego, right?
Mm,
So you take it back to quantum biology. We have divorced and separated ourselves from the cloth from which we were cut, which is nature. We're literally made from the stardust of nature,
mm,
and we proclaimed ourselves to be God. Science, the intellect is the end game. But when you study nature, how she works, you find out there's a never-ending complexity there that you will never unravel. But when you connect to it, the application of quantum biology is super simple. Connect back to nature, connect back from your source, your physical source. Spirituality connects you back to your non-physical source, your soul, right?
mm,
And so it's
mm.
basically in two planes. We have divorced ourselves, separated ourselves, and on both we're trying to return back, right? That's the spiritual journey. It's just our return to from remembering who we are, remembering where we came from. And that's where I resonate a lot with quantum biology. And the spiritual community is also on the health, they're very health conscious as well.
Mhm.
Uh, but they also are quite enamored with the food and the supplements and all that. And that's another reason why I started the podcast because I knew I could reach them
Yeah.
and I could maybe leave some nuggets for them here. And so there's connections on both ends. And
Mm.
that's what I love about it.
Yeah, there also seems to be a lot of parallel imagery about light in all
Yeah.
religions. I mean, I grew up in an Islamic environment, and it's all about light, light, light. Light is goodness. Light is your savior. Light is this. Same in, biblical Christian traditions. I'm not sure about Judaism, but I'm assuming, it would be the same thing. And then you have these practices like the sun salutation in Hinduism, the
Mm.
Sunyar Namaskar, where they're literally just greeting the sun and touching the earth, right? And it's like, wow, that's a kind of a weird parallel. And I made a similar kind of parallel, or I noticed that even in Islam, the way it works are you familiar with how the prayers work in
No.
Islam? Yeah. So there's five prayers, right?
Okay.
Okay. One as right before the sun rises.
Wow.
Okay. And
Yeah.
and the way you pray, you can look it up on your free time, is you stand up, you're on the ground, right? And then there's a position where you kneel down, put your knees on the ground, right? You kind of sit down. And then there's a position where you put your forehead on the ground. You put your all of your extremities literally on the ground with your
Wow.
hands. Okay. And you do that, two times in the morning, and you do it multiple times later on. Anyways, so there's one you're supposed to do in the morning, like right before the sun comes up, okay, and then one in the noon, one after the noon, one before the sun goes down, and one right after the sun goes down. And I realized that that's basically a blueprint for good circadian health. You're grounding and you're exposing yourself to light. You're kind of programming yourself to be awake at those times, right? And it's it's kind of amazing. I don't know. Again, I don't know if quantum biology was understood by people 1,400 years ago, but it's certainly interesting to see these kind of common things that are happening. Yeah. Have you
No.
noticed any parallels in any other
Oh,
way?
the more so I talked like, oh, melatonin, all these fancy scientific terms because I only do that because that's how people nowadays will take something seriously, right? Science, left brain, rationality, etc. But in the background of my mind, I always knew like these ancient traditions, the ancient wisdom. Quantum biology is only translating what they've always known. There's nothing new for them. They've always been connected to nature. They've always known the wisdom of the sun, of light, of following nature's laws, right? And so when man when man's intellect runs rampant, we have to kind of work with it, use its own language, make it all sophisticated, sciencey, technical, in order to get it to buy in, right? And then once you're in, you realize, oh, there's no need for any of that. The application is so simple, right?
Mm.
Jack Cruz can take you down a 20-year rabbit hole of all the physics behind all these things. But all you really need to do is just go outside, adhere to the light and dark cycles, eat what's local to your environment, and what else is there? There's like
That's it.
it's not fancy, it's not like sexy, it's just normal. It's what should be, it's how it's always been, but we've unknowingly walked backwards, and there's no blame in it, right? It's light seems so benign, artificial lights, but it's also insidious. You don't see the effects until 20 years down the line when diabetes, a whole population is suffering with it collectively. So, like the ego, this paradigm corrects insidious, you know, effects of separation, whether that's taking place in your mind or in physical time space. And so, yeah, to cap it off, like this parallel point, it just quantum biology's technical terms haven't been known, but its essence, the main fruits of it have always been known.
Mm.
There's no question about it by the ancient wisdom of cultures back then, for sure.
Yeah. I love this stuff, science, spirituality, and science and philosophy and the intersection. Um,
Oh,
it's it's just so fascinating to see two different realms kind of combine, and that point of that common point is what real truth is to me.
oh
That's
yeah,
what I that's what I follow in my life. That's my North Star, so to speak.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
It's the interface. We live
yeah,
on the interface of those two realms. It's just two
yeah.
different hemispheres.
It's two different hemispheres. Yeah. Um, yeah. So I this is phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is great. Um, do you have time, by the way? Is this
Oh
okay
no,
if we
you're
go
good.
another?
Yeah,
Okay.
you're good.
Yeah, forgot to ask. Sorry. Um, so how I want to kind of backtrack if you don't mind. And
Hmm.
you opened your introduction with you and your family. You said you were born in the Philippines,
Hmm.
right? And you said you had some family issues, and that was kind of was that kind of the main issue that you were kind of going through throughout your
Yeah,
childhood, would you say? Am I interpreting that correctly?
for sure. That's
Yeah.
why if I had to, because I realized, oh, I'm probably gonna have to introduce myself somehow. And when I thought back and reflected back on how did this all start, it definitely started when I realized there was kind of a difference in other families and my family, and then therefore myself. Because if you're a kid, you kind of like you take everything personally, but innocently, right? So if your family is not like showing the same love as other families are, as a kid, you will internalize it. You will think, oh, there's something wrong with me. That's just what kids do. And yeah, my parents had their own issues, right? They didn't have the bandwidth to parent and nurture us kids. And so I don't blame them anymore for it. But that's how it all started because when you perceive yourself as like, wow, what's wrong with me, right? You will do anything in the world to kind of find that fulfillment. And my whole life has kind of been that journey back to finding that fulfillment, through in high school I was very much about self-improvement, the Tony Robbins, the David Goggins, that
Yeah.
grind,
Yeah. Yeah.
being productive, waking up at 4 a.m., which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
which is like I look back and I'm like, damn, that was a terrible idea knowing what I know now.
Yeah. Yeah.
um I did all that because I was like seeking so hard to fulfill the emptiness, and even and this has been a recent realization, even all the health, the spirituality, it's all coming from the same source. And it's an interesting thing to walk this in real time. But yeah, they had their problems. I noticed the difference between the love expressed for me and other families. And everyone in the world is on that journey in their own way of just finding that love, that self-satisfaction.
Mm.
And it's led me to want to serve others and down interesting rabbit holes. I've had many people tell them that I've impacted their lives positively, and I'm not even known yet. So if it weren't for that, rough beginning, I wouldn't have had this like insane drive to seek the solutions, the seekingness to start. And yeah, life is unfolding. It's gonna be a blast for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I certainly hope so, man. Yeah, I sense a lot of like deep wisdom just from speaking to you. I didn't really get it from the podcast, but just from the get-go, I could kind of sense it even through the screen. That there's a lot of lessons that seem like that you learned there. And it's like it's made you like tougher, smart. It's sent you on this journey. And now you not only have you helped yourself, but not your cups are overflowing. I mean, you've done it in this podcast right here and to whoever watches it. So it's awesome to see. It's great to see.
Thank you. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
people will say, "Yeah, no, that's so tough for you. I'm sorry." And I look back and I'm like, "No, that was what I needed. That's what my soul needed. It needed that handicap in order
Yeah.
to bear more fruit."
Yeah.
So, for anyone that has been down, anyone that has been like down their whole life and listening, and you're looking at people who seem to have it right from the start, I would say like don't fret. You're going to have an inner resilience, inner capacity to be empathetic. All your inner qualities are going to shine if you start with that handicap. And the people who start, right off the bat, they have to like learn that later on. So we're all different. We're all kaleidoscopes, all unique. And so I would be encouraging for that person that seems to relate to what I'm sharing right now.
You'll be their lighthouse.
Yes, that's the whole point. It's a ripple effect.
Yeah. And I was curious, like, so did you move to the US, you said, or was it Canada afterwards?
Philippines, then the US
Okay,
when I was 5, and I've been here ever since. Yeah. Where are you at?
gotcha. So I was born in Kuwait. I'm in the Middle East. Are you familiar with it? It's like a small
Oh,
country.
I
Yeah.
studied Arabic for a couple of years. Yeah, I'm familiar.
Oh, that's awesome. Nice.
Yeah.
In the Air Force, right?
Hmm.
Okay. Um, yeah, so I was born and raised here, and my mom is American, so I'm biracial.
Nice.
so she's from Michigan, and I basically have my other half of the family over there. So I would kind of travel between and basically just went to college in Michigan in the States and
That's
study
cool.
engineering. Yeah, yeah. And where
And
are
is that
you?
where
If you
you are
don't,
now?
I no, I'm in Kuwait right now.
Nice.
So just
Okay.
just kind of living here permanently. And if you don't mind me asking, like, what state are you in?
I'm in Texas right now,
Okay,
but
awesome.
yeah.
Nice. Nice. Okay. Um, well, listen, I the sun is kind of going down. So I think maybe it's a good time to wrap it up. Could
Yeah,
talk about
yeah.
the light and stuff, but man, Kenford, let's do a part two, and I'd be honored to have you on again. This is great.
Oh yeah, 100%, bro. The fact that you're 3 weeks, this is you're 3 weeks down this rabbit hole.
Yeah,
So I'm sure Sam has the sciencey side and his spiritual side. Quantum biology will fulfill your sciencey side so much.
yeah,
It's gonna be you're so early down, and once you see what we all see, you're gonna be
yeah.
like, oh my God, this is the
Wow.
the key to everything, to the physical aspect
You're
of
really selling it, man.
it stops all the food wars, I'm telling you. And then
Yeah,
you're just gonna keep spreading it. So that good on you for, adhering. You're like, oh man, the sun's going down. Yeah, that's
yeah. It's in the back of my mind. And you know
yeah,
what?
yeah.
I think people get convinced in certain ways. I'm someone that gets convinced through science. Like if you tell me about the science, and obviously I haven't looked at any papers, but like I believe you. I'm like, yeah, that's my language.
Mm.
But I'm sure for some people the spiritual side might kind of be uh, maybe a better means to communicate to convince
Hmm.
them. Um, but yeah, well, where can people find you, Kenford?
Right now, I'm on YouTube and Instagram. My main thing is on. I'm gonna get it on Spotify. There's guys, when you start a podcast, there's a lot of miscellaneous things that you didn't know to do, like
Yeah,
with
yeah,
artwork and reels. So I'm just like figuring that out as we go
awesome,
on. But right now, it's YouTube for the podcast, Instagram for anything else, and it's at Kenford Bitana, and then YouTube is just Kenford Bitana. So you can
perfect.
find me there, and I'll be doing more episodes on spirituality pretty soon. But my podcast is about both those domains. You got the linear, the physical, the manifest, and you got the non-linear, the unmanifest, the spiritual. I like to do both, because we live in both simultaneously. So let's let's be like versatile. So to introduce, I also like to um I also want to get the Western mind, the logical, materialistic mind, to more open to all the unseen, the spiritual dimensions, etc. So the podcast is literally just to push boundaries, expand awareness, and shed light.
Kind of like,
Yeah,
all right,
yeah.
man. Take care, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me on.